Thank you. Okay, so welcome everyone. I don't think we have quorum this time, do we? Let me see. This is horrible on mobile. Can someone else check? But I don't think we have enough people. Oh, okay, maybe then 12. Okay, we have 7 people from team in this call, unless I'm miscounting. Okay, so no huge changes, only small changes. Okay, so Björn and Gautam are at Grafana Live Berlin, so they can't make it, which also means we should probably skip the first one. I mean, we can also just at least start to discuss it a little bit, but it seems like it should be with a wider group, in particular, as we don't have Julian or Julius in here.
I mean, at least starting the discussion, I think, might be useful. So to get some
I mean,
initial feedback.
Voting-wise, it makes sense because it has the most votes. Yeah, okay, then let's just do it. Oh yeah, thank you for creating the thing.
So yeah, I mean, I can maybe say a few words
Okay.
about it because I was also involved. So, I mean, as you know, more and more people are using OpenTelemetry for their metrics, and OpenTelemetry allows dots in metric names and label names. And currently, Prometheus doesn't, which means that when metrics are exported to Prometheus, all dots are replaced by underscores. And this is, there's more and more feedback that people just find this annoying. And so talking to people who have been with the community for longer, like Gotham, it seems like the original reason why there are no dots in metric names and label names was statsd, because statsd has this hierarchical dot-based hierarchical name model, and Prometheus didn't want to have that, and so they discouraged dots. So in order to make sure that this statsd hierarchies don't make it into Prometheus in the first place. But I think these times are long over, and statsd will not become the standard monitoring system in the future. And so maybe it's time to reconsider this. And I'm sure there are a lot of people using OpenTelemetry applications who would be happy to just see the same label names and metric names as they see in other tools, also in Prometheus. We talked a bit about that with Björn. He said that he said 2 things that are also written there. I mean, one, he has an idea of using maybe a dot operator in PromQL, and in that case, it wouldn't work. So if we allow dots, we should probably think of another way to extend PromQL. And also, he feels like if we extend metrics names and label names, then maybe not just for dots, but for other characters as well. But that was just some initial thoughts when we talked about it, right? So yeah, and as you said, Richie, I mean, I guess we cannot decide anything here or so, but I would still be curious, like, what the general feeling is, like, if there are people who are feel strongly against dots, or what's your take on it? Yo, Ben.
So, having worked on open metrics, we discussed this quite a lot, and the problem is when you add dots to support something that looks like statsd, that comes along with a huge expectation that it's going to work like statsd, and so people will want to do something dot star dot something, and this will either we'll have to support this in Prometheus and support globbing in metric names in PromQL, or it's just going to not work and users are going to be angry and annoyed that Prometheus doesn't do statsd the way they thought it does.
I am not fully convinced that this is still true today. I mean, and yes, I was also part of a lot of the open metrics discussion, obviously. I've always been more impartial about this question, because it's people know it's a different system. Like, I mean, at some point, I if they expect something to work, which is clearly defined as not working at some point, then use something else, and they probably don't want to because they have something better. I do dimly remember also having discussions about backwards compatibility and about things breaking and about certain uncertainties developing if you have dots, but honestly, I don't have it detailed enough to be confident in making something up on the spot. We can try and look into the meaning notes of open metrics if we find something on this. Yeah, personally, I'm impartial to the question.
And I think the landscape has changed with OpenTelemetry being picked up more and more, because OpenTelemetry supports dots, but there's nothing like with globs and stuff that StatsD has. And so maybe today there is like people don't associate dots with StatsD, they just associate it with whatever OpenTelemetry does or other libraries. I don't know. Micrometer has dots and others that were never designed for StatsD.
There is quite a lot of systems that assume dots. Actually, the metric system that I'm currently about to turn off at my company takes Prometheus metric names with underscores and converts everything, all the underscores, to dots, whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, I think I don't have a strong opinion either. One remark from my side might be that other systems that integrate with Prometheus might have the assumption that label names can't contain dots, so they would have to change that if we change like that rule. But again, as long as it's communicated and so on, it's probably not a big deal. Like it might be like for the, I haven't checked, but might be in the Prometheus operator that we enforce in some places that in relabeling rules, for instance, that target labels match the actual expectations.
On the compatibility, yeah, on the compatibility thing, and also, sorry for not doing. For anyone who's not Prometheus team, please feel invited to speak up at any time with anything you have or anything you want to say. Like, this is not just us talking and being like on a panel. This is actually people who like if you decide to join this call, that's more than enough to validate that you're speaking up. So please speak up if you have an opinion, unless we have a call for consensus, in which case only the Prometheus team members can have it. But else, please really feel free to raise your hand and speak up on anything. On the signaling, I think we're basically talking about Prometheus 3 in particular, as we have native histograms coming around the corner anyway. So we would have enough things to just signal that this is actually a larger thing if we wanted to have it. So I'm not too worried about the signaling. And if we have a breaking, like if we have a major version change, we can also say, okay, we now start emitting a different set of characters for metric names. So you're just not compatible with Prometheus 3.x, and that should take care of most of the signaling work.
I think the dots are mainly, like, from my perspective, coming from the Kubernetes side, mainly interesting because with the growth of Kubernetes, people got more and more used to having the dots as, like, to use as namespacing. Like, you have Kubernetes.io and it's sort of slash and stuff. And I wonder if, like, I know with Prometheus, the namespacing was always underscore separated and it wasn't as clear. So I wonder if people might be using it, want to use the dots for making their namespaces clear, have another symbol to separate things. That would be what I would be using it probably.
That
so
was
for
one of
in
the
open
proposals.
telemetry, that's clearly the case. It's
Yeah.
so if you look at the semantic conventions, then you have like Java dot blah, and then the actual names can have underscores, right? So it's really more like a namespacing thing.
Yeah.
That was one of the original proposals within open metrics, was to add namespacing via dots. But in order to maintain Prometheus compatibility, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
And also, as an addition, because I just realized that this might be non-obvious, because I think it was Simon, or it doesn't matter, talking about also offering other or allowing other characters. We can't do slashes, because slashes are math operators already defined in PromQL, and it would be way too confusing, way too much of a potential just waiting. It's an accident waiting to happen if we did slashes. Just to deliberately take this out of the discussion, because I don't think we have any way to ever do this.
Then I wonder, with that background from like myself, doing dots without slashes, I think wouldn't help the use case I'm the most familiar with, at least on the Kubernetes side. Like if people could do dots, but we can't do slashes. Oh no. Like, how do you separate it again? So I don't know.
No, it's a hard problem. Like fundamentally, I cannot discern in absentia of other information, or without, cannot discern if foo/bar is a metric called foo bar with like a slash in it, or if I want to take a division of foo and bar. I mean, we could escape them, but that is horrible. Or double slashes, because no.
I think what we do, and I think definitely not compliant with the Google Managed Prometheus, the syntax, because they need some kind of prefix. In the PromQL query, they do like Kubernetes.io and then colon, because that's the only separator they could probably come up with that is not a slash, not a math operator. Well, yeah, not a math operator. But again, it doesn't match what people are used to with dots and slashes. So not doing dots at all might actually be better user experience than giving half an experience.
So, I mean, I think we cannot really conclude it here anyway, because we don't have the quorum for, decision making. But it was good to hear some, what opinions are there. So I found it helpful. So, but if there are no other arguments or nobody who wants to add something, then I would say we leave it at this point and just put it back to the agenda for next time when we will be more people.
The only Kevin Wiesmüller probably. You added a line in as a suggestion. I can't parse it. What do you mean by what you wrote into the meeting notes?
Oh yeah, I don't know if there's more of an agenda. I just put in there. Just general. I think last time I was here, when it was May, I mentioned that I'd be willing to help with open metrics implementation in general, because like we'll be very happy to have it.
Okay, yeah.
And then it was summer break, so I kind of want to follow up if there's like ways we can help get there.
Drop your email address in chat. I'll send you an email and CC Ben and everyone else. That's best. If you just drop your email in chat or into or in the doc is also perfectly fine.
You deleted me. Okay.
Sorry. Okay, so just to write down. I'm also everyone is heartily invited to help write meeting notes. But I can write them while we do the next topic. So next topic by votes is okay, by votes of people who are actually in this call. Matthias is also not here. No, he's not here. So we're down to single vote things. If anyone feels strongly on any of the topics, just raise your voice, because there is nothing which is obviously taking precedence. We can also just go from the top on the assumption that those are the most. We can talk about common labels for queries. We can talk about AIX support, and Ganesh had something, I think. Oh, goodness. Structured remote write design doc. So, in absentee of anyone having an opinion, or does anyone have an opinion? 3 to 1 sold. Then let's also just half discuss common labels for queries, which are just the one which is on top. So the query language of Victoria Metrics supports a with function, and you basically can shove all kinds of magic into this function to an extent which is probably quite dangerous. But they have one really nice thing: you can define common labels on your metrics, and you write them once. So if you have a super long query or something, or you have tons of labels, you don't have this thing where you forgot to update the label in one single place, and your whole query breaks or the dashboard goes dark or what have you. That functionality, I think, would be worth considering for PromQL as well. It might be a little bit of a footgun if I do a lot of nesting, of course. That can lead to. Sorry, what? Of course, that. Sorry, there was just a join. So yeah, it can turn into a footgun if you have too much nesting. Of course, you can still get confused about when you put what labels where. Yet I think this is something to just consider to extend open PromQL with, to be able to say, okay, this is my label set, and I write it once, and it's valid for this complete query. And obviously, I would still be able to add additional labels in bits and pieces where I need it. Yeah, but that's the thing. What do you think about it?
I mean, as it's just syntactic sugar, this could also be something that a UI does implicitly without changing PromQL in the Prometheus server.
I don't fully agree, because in alerts and such, like you have enough different places where you need to put this in recording rules, in alerts, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it is a UI question. You can do this with a UI, and it might be nice to do it with a UI. But I think the actual power comes from if this is run within Prometheus itself. It would also propagate to all the other compatible systems. You could rely on this. You could copy and paste it back and forth. I don't think having a UI is solving the thing which I see as worth solving. Any other thoughts? Okay, are you indifferent to it, or are you against it? Just like to see if there's like.
It's just a question for this kind of with
Yeah.
labels. Is a runtime. It will be expand during the runtime, or it will be expand during the compilation time.
You mean runtime and compilation of what? It's at query time when you query.
I mean, if we will delay the evaluation of these labels to last minute, or it will function like a const expression in the C++ that we compile, we do the expansion on just before the execution.
So you need to do this expansion pretty early in the actual query, because else you're not able to actually select the correct time series from your time series database. So at the time when you do the read in the database, you already need to have everything fully expanded.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I don't know if Simon O'Brien raised the hand first.
Just yeah,
Fine.
small comment. Just since you ask, sorry, I'll let Brian
Yeah.
go after. Yeah, I haven't seen that syntax before. My first reaction would be that, well, sure, that's powerful, but that can also like become probably quite messy. But yeah, if obviously if users ask for it, then why not? Not for myself, I would totally buy it.
So on the specific syntax, I also dislike the syntax, and also what Victoria Metrics is doing is too powerful, because you can, like, there's way more hidden behind this with thing, and a few of those things are actually dangerous. I mean, Björn also noted something. I can just read out what he said. Note that with Victoria Metrics with feature is extremely powerful. While it sounds great at first, it can be a real foot gun in the monitoring use case. I understand that this item is just about common labels functionality and not about the more powerful aspects of Victoria Metrics with. And that's precisely the point, because my proposal would be to basically do a common labels function or something which makes it clear that this is the only thing which is being introduced, not this super wide functionality.
Okay.
Which is also a good argument for not even having the with thing, because else people might expect everything to work when we deliberately don't support everything. Brian?
Yeah, so you've said most of what I was going to say. I'm not really seeing how a function would fit there. I mean, we don't really have any other cases where you can put a function inside a selector, or maybe you could expand on that. Oh, this is not the right forum to design the feature, but I certainly didn't understand that suggestion.
Fair. I basically just took the mental concept and gave it a name, and so that is how I put a name to the concept of saying it's a common label function. But I don't care how the actual implementation is done. I care about the functionality being covered. I can also think of a few different ways of how to do this. At this stage, I'm much more interested in if people like it or if they dislike it. And you're right, a function might not make the most sense. It also semantically doesn't really make sense.
So I like the common selector thing. I do caution that further down the page on the Victoria Metrics site, they have user-defined functions, which I do think feels like a can of worms that we don't yet need to open. I like the common, what I would call common selectors, because it's very common to have something like a ratio in a query, where you do want the same thing, on either side. Having said that, it's equally common that you're doing some sort of join where the labels don't actually match up on either side of the expression, and you actually do want to say different things. However, I guess you can add to the common bit. Anyway, I like the idea.
So yes, I agree. You need to be able to add more labels at a later stage. Well, not later stage, but like in a more specific place. If you just write a few labels in within that query, like the thing which probably just from the gut would make sense is precisely how we should implement this. You just add 2 labels in a place and they just get added onto the rest. without any different syntax. I don't have to write a plus open parenthesis or anything. I just write my normal curlies and done.
Yeah, just pasted in the chat a link to an issue I happened to read today, which was filed by Ben a while ago. It seems to kind of be in the same area where people want to kind of have global label selectors that would apply to all the metrics inside a query.
With that, if a metric doesn't have a label that's in the common labels, would it not get any matches or would it be ignored? Because I think it has a very limited use case if it needs to match every metric, right?
I think in the proposal for this meeting, it's. Are you asking about the proposal for this meeting, or are you asking about 4949?
In general, the common, I think for this, the common labels function, for example.
So the one in the agenda for this meeting, you have to explicitly say where you want to apply the selector. So it does whatever it does if you just wrote it out. As I think Fabian or someone said, it's syntactic sugar. It does exactly the same. It's just like a macro expansion.
Okay.
And maybe just another question, if anybody knows, can such a common filter be combined with additional label selectors, or does that not work?
You mean in Victoria metrics?
Yeah. Or
well, I think for us it should work.
Right.
I mean, I had forgotten the issue. It seems I even participated in the discussion. I do note that 2 times independently of each other, the direction was always, yes, this needs to be supported. So I think we should just support it and done.
Yep, I think that makes sense. That's just a couple of not so obvious cases that need to be well considered, I think. Say, for example, nesting. Will nesting work for this?
I think it needs to work if we support it. And then it's an engineering problem of how to make it work. So at this stage, it's much more about the intention of, do we even want to pursue something like this or not?
I mean, I think the sort of an argument for it is that it will make developing or maintaining complex queries a lot less error prone, right?
Yes. To some extent, I feel reminded of early Git discussions where syntactic sugar was also initially not seen as a goal in it as of itself. And anyone who used early Git will probably agree that it was good to add more syntactic sugar. I'm not going to call for consensus because we don't have enough people in here, but I do, like, if I feel the room correctly, like there's general tentative, this would be nice feelings. Okay. So I'm just going to write it down as summary. Okay. If anyone used the time to develop strong feelings about the topic which they want to talk about, else I'm just going to go forward in the order which I'm seeing them in. 3, 2, 1 sold. Okay. Next one is AIX support. There. Oh, Robert is in the call. Okay, then I'm just going to let him do the talking.
I wonder if waiting for Julian might be a better choice for this.
Yeah,
he has more details about why it's not supported today.
We don't have enough people for quorum anyway, so this is basically a little bit of a fireside chat with no decision-making power of any sort. So it's much more about synchronizing on topics. But we don't have to. Both is fine.
I think let's skip this one for now. I don't have enough background to like make a case for why it makes sense or why we might not want to do it.
Huh? Next one, by Björn, org-wide guidelines for Git branching, handling, merge, squash, rebase. As he proposed, and he's not here, let's skip this. The next is Julian, then we have Björn. Björn. Okay, there's all by Björn. Okay, then let's talk about the org-wide guidelines for Git branching, handling. Does anyone want to take this? Does anyone care about this strongly? Maybe Ganesh?
I don't feel strongly about this. But I think it should be squash for normal PRs because a lot of commits that I see on PRs are small changes or some corrections, and some of the commits don't build. So I think it might be better as a general practice to enforce squash. But in case of releases and merging different branches, I think there we should use merge. I'm basically saying what we do in Prometheus at this moment. Like Prometheus.
There are also cases where pull requests are very intentionally split across 3 or 4 commits, like for ease of review, be those. I mean, I think Brian just submitted one of those that I haven't looked at where he intentionally put in 4 different commits.
But could those be 4 different PRs, or is that a lot of work?
So I'm also happy to let Brian go first.
Sorry, because my name was mentioned. So sometimes if the change is complicated, I'll say, well, you know, the PR is split into a refactoring followed by the change I actually want to make, for example. And so, I mean, yeah, they could go as 2 PRs, but it doesn't really make sense that it's one change. I've kind of reconciled myself with losing those commits to posterity. I mean, they're still generally viewable. If you go to the original PR and look at the original branch, you can see the original commits. I'm not too precious about keeping them in the main branch. What I do want to ask for is that the message that goes in should be well constructed. You know, very often GitHub pastes some kind of nonsense in that says, you know, signed off by Brian Borum, signed off by Brian Borum, signed off by Brian Borum, signed. Like, who wants to read that? So that's my ask is that whatever method you use, the message that goes in Git should make sense.
I agree with everything Brian just said. I'll also note that I have several times seen a strong split across the age of the people and what side of the debate they fall on. I was honestly somewhat amused by not in the bad sense, amused by having multiple PRs for one thing instead of having multiple commits in one PR. I think what Ganesh said earlier is probably the key to unlocking this. If it is a branch, merging is fine. And I do think that we have regularly PRs which are worthy enough to be their own branch, like a real branch, so to speak, not just a PR. And I'm not using Git language here. the point is this: I think we should be giving the contributors and also all maintainers always the option to say, I would want this not to be squashed. I want this to be merged, and that should be by default be accepted by everyone. Because I also come from the school of do things in small increments. So either I can look at the whole thing if I so choose, or I can see what the actual steps are. It doesn't really cost us anything to have this, and as Brian says, those squashes often look not nice because it's basically just lots of sign-offs. So I think we should, if we keep the default of squashing, give contributors and everyone the option of saying, hey, this should be merged and not squashed. Chris?
I have to unmute myself. I'm curious on the like a bunch of sign-offs because that also bothers me a lot of the time. Would there be any concerns with just removing all of them but the last, like from a legal perspective or anything like that? I don't think so, but I just want to see if somebody knows better than I.
I don't know the answer, but on my side, that's what I'm already doing. I'm keeping the last one and removing all over because it's not beautiful for the commit, but it doesn't provide any useful information. So I have no, I don't know if it's a good thing or legal things, but I'm already doing it. Hopefully, I'm not a criminal. No.
Yeah, I think you're going to jail. So none of us is a lawyer. But so even though not a lawyer, spend too much time with too many lawyers, at least under the not common law from US and UK, but the other thing in the rest of Europe and the Western world, is always intention based. And the intent is clear of signaling what you want to have. And the other strong argument in favor of this being okay is courts regularly basically go towards industry standards and just establish industry procedures because they cannot regulate everything anyway. And it's absolutely industry standard to just do squash merges and rewrite the thing and just basically run a unique across all the signatures. It's what the Linux kernel does. It's what Git itself does. By definition, this is okay.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, that probably could be at least like some sort of conclusion here is we should be editing those squashed commits to not just be a page of star fix this signed off by.
I don't think we should do a call for consensus, but I think we can. I can formulate something, and we see if anyone disagrees with this. That we retain squash as the default, but if we squash, we actually clean up the squash commit message, and both the merger and the person proposing the PR or anyone else who comments basically always has the right, so to speak, to request not squashing but just merging. And I mean, over the years we figured this out anyway, because like if you get the 100th PR by Brian and it's in 5 commits, you know he prefers to do it this way, so you just. But that's not a technical problem. It will be solved socially. Ben?
There's one more that I would like to discuss is fast forward merges or no merge commit merges. I personally dislike them because it doesn't give me the pull request information in the commit history, and it makes for writing change logs really hard. There's only one place where anybody actually uses this, and it's one person, but maybe there's other people that also do this. But I'd like to stop doing that officially.
I agree. I also dislike fast forward. Unless it's like updating a branch to whatever the remote is also, but that's not what we're talking about.
When merging into main or something like that. That seems reasonable. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, just one thing I do commonly do is I also have just looked at what the pull request is. Like, if it looks like somebody has intentionally created commits, I will do a merge instead of a squash and things like that. If they have well-formed commit messages. So
For the record, I've also been doing this for basically before joining Prometheus.
Yeah, I did that too for a really big PR, and that the user take care to have a really useful commit. But it doesn't happen so much.
Ganesh?
Yeah, for things like merging release branch into the main branch or the commits that point to a release, I think we should also try to have a message that we should never squash those PRs, because I think we have, like, at least at Grafana Labs, we have faced issues where some release was in the release branch, but that commit was not in the main branch because it was squash merged into main branch. So you have the release, but you don't have that release commit in the main branch, and that causes some problems. Like when you try to vendor release, it gives some problems with Go mod. So maybe we also want to have some messaging around that or some guidelines around that.
Taking a step back, I mean, ignoring fast forward, or no, even for fast forward as well. I think what everyone is actually agreeing with each other about is if there is actually a good structure in whatever the thing is, and it's not just a mess of fix final. We should do real merges and not squash. Like, I think this is actually a consensus position. We don't have Julius here to cry havoc, but at least within this call at the moment, this seems to be at least a direction. Just writing some notes. So I'm not calling for a consensus, but just as a conclusion thing. And if you disagree, please speak up. Conclusion: if it's a well-structured and meaningful series of commits, do not squash them.
I agree, and I think we could also add, if squashing, the commits should be cleaned up, since that seems like an agreement.
Yeah, if you squash. Okay, I just added, if you squash, you need to clean up the commit message. Okay. Julian proposed a topic with just internationalization and linking a. Yes, Kevin?
I would actually be curious about the structured remote write, just like what the status of what needs to be done. I think I know the team that wrote this, but I know it has been sitting around for a while, and I wonder what we, like, if you're still interested, what we could do to move forward.
It's complicated, I would say. There's definite interest in creating like single payload remote like one scrape goes to one payload remote write requests. That transactional, I think, is what we've called that in the past, based remote write. I'm not sure there is as much interest in changing the actual format of the remote write payload at this time. That's kind of been where at least Callum and I have had slight discussions about it. I would have to, I don't know if, is Callum on the call now? I don't want to put words into his mouth.
I think Björn has an interest in this, and Ryan most likely remembers the name of the new protocol, which I already forgot, which is even more efficient. And no, okay. I know Björn had an interest in exploring. I forgot
Are you
the
talking
name,
about Arrow or Parquet?
No.
Okay.
But something to replace Proto or better Proto, blah blah blah. Something. But okay, I'm also not going to put words into Björn's mouth, as you can see on Jetlag.
I remember some chat about more efficient proto, like replacing whatever we're using, GoGo or something now. Brian?
Yeah, so I think I've glanced at this document in the past. I've looked a lot at the efficiency of decoding the remote write messages. There's a PR up there where I rewrote it all by hand to make it go faster. So changing what goes on the wire can give huge improvements. Like right now, we repeat the same string potentially thousands of times. So I would certainly, I'm in the camp that supports changing the wire protocol. However, it's a bit daunting, and you'd have to support the old one for years, probably forever. But yeah, I just wanted to, because I think you said, some people had said we can't really change the wire protocol. I'm certainly up for changing the wire protocol. I hadn't particularly thought about this one. Sending all parts of a histogram in the same message is certainly good. Reducing the amount of redundancy. We zip the messages, right, or whatever we do with them. We compress them, and they compress down about 40 to 1 or something like that, which tells you how much redundancy there is to begin with. So I certainly think there's efficiencies to be had by not putting so much redundancy in the message to begin with.
Also, like, related to that, if we can do the transaction-based remote write, where it is one scrape goes to one remote write request, that opens up avenues for a better wire protocol or a way to deduplicate a lot of those strings, because a lot of the repeated strings are from the same scrape. You have Prometheus HTTP per handler a million, like 40, 50 times per Prometheus endpoint you scrape right now, and you could compress all of those away. But in the current,
all the labels that come from the endpoint or through relabeling from the endpoint. There's some limit to that. I mean, one scrape could have 100,000 metrics in it, and you may not want to send all of those in one go. So I guess it sort of means one reasonably sized scrape goes in one message.
Yeah, I think the previous proposal we break at some point, because sending all of cube state metrics in one remote write request would be painful.
Yeah.
So does that somewhat answer your question of like maybe at least a path forward is begin with supporting at least not breaking on histograms, preferably putting as much of a single scrape into one remote write request as possible, and then consider wire protocol changes? Or
So it's stuff that would have been like the design that would need more discussion, like more detail on how things would work, I guess. But
yeah, like it could almost be split into two designs. Like one is like, I mean, there's two, and like there's kind of two improvements here. One is like self-contained write. That is something we definitely want to do. Changing the format is somewhat orthogonal to that.
and I think I raised a question on like why Proto was kind of dropped in the past, and the GZIP was, I think, mostly the answer. And one interesting point to that we discovered is with agents like OpenTelemetry, where you kind of read Prometheus and you need to send it in like via Proto or back to Prometheus. For Prometheus, the GZIPing sounds fine, but as soon as you're encoding and decoding more, you still pay the cost of allocating like the whole strings. If the protocol would support not having all the metric names and all the metric the label keys, you would actually save a lot of encoding and decoding that we pay right now.
Yes, I agree with that. I'm not sure this design this design should
Totally
help
unrelated to
some,
that. Yeah.
but I definitely think we could explore better avenues there.
Okay. I'll also try to find the original authors and see if they're even still working.
Yeah, there's another. I mean, there was a draft pull request up that was trying to do the transactional based remote requests, and like there's some other related efforts as well. But it's a harder problem than it feels like it should be sometimes.
And it's not okay to split a single scrape in multiple requests as long as there is like one metric stays in that you don't split up metrics or histograms. That would still be kind of a break in Prometheus mentality, right? Like if a scrape gets too big, you cut it in half and it would still be valid.
I mean, we cut it up into hundreds of parts right now in remote write, so anything we could do would be better than what we do today to try to keep them together. And this problem doesn't happen just with histograms too. Like it's common where I'll have a failure counter and a total and a just requests counter or something like that. And if those two are off, I'll suddenly see 101% of requests, or like you see incorrect values there as well. So
okay, thanks.
So, given that we only have 2 minutes left, I don't think we're going to cover huge things. Thank you, everyone. Ben, please remember to download the thing and upload it to YouTube because you have the recording now. Yeah. See you next month or maybe at KubeCon. Yeah.
See ya. Thank you. Bye.